True crime enthusiasts, it's Rabia Chaudhry
and Ellen Marsh.
You are invited to join us on Rabia and Ellen Solve the Case, a true crime talk show.
Grab a front row seat as we, along with our special celebrity guests, dissect our favorite true crime cases every other Thursday.
And between those episodes, join us as we talk about current true crime headlines in our About Damn Crime series.
Skip the ordinary and dive into extraordinary investigations and conversations with us.
Subscribe now on your favorite podcast platform, and let's unravel these captivating stories together.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 356 of the True Crime All the Time Unsolved podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing good. How about yourself?
I'm doing very well.
That's good.
I talked about it on TCAB, but it's one of my favorite times of year. March Madness, the NCAA basketball tournament. I love everything about it. I love the fact that there's like 6 games going on at the same time on 6 different channels. I love the fact that a no-name school can beat, like one of the best teams in the country on any given day.
Plus, you do all that bookie stuff.
Yeah, but let's not talk about that.
Okay.
Let's go ahead and give our Patreon shout-outs. Jordan Simpson jumped out at our highest level.
What's up, Jordan?
Sarah Lindwall.
Hey, Sarah.
Peggy Reinerson.
Well, thank you, Reinerson.
Emily Hartley.
Hey, Hartley.
Lolly.
What's going on, Lolly?
Mark Fredrickson.
Hey, there's Mark.
Amanda Nobles.
Amanda, that's awesome.
Gabrielle St. Onge.
Gabrielle.
Yeah. Beth Altman jumped out to our highest level.
Oh, thank you, Beth.
Christina Gerasimchuk, or Gerasimchuk.
I'm just going to say Christina.
Oh, that's easier. And then last but not least, Casey Hostert.
Hey, thanks, Casey.
So we appreciate that new support. And then if we go back into the vault, this week we selected Jennifer Annis.
Well, Annis, you're the best.
Yeah, absolutely. Gibbs, we have an episode out right now on TCAT. It's part 1 of 2 on Danny and Larry Raines. And, these are 2 brothers who were both serial killers. But if as that's not enough, they operated independently of each other. And it's thought that this is the only known instance in U.S. history where one family produced 2 serial killers who didn't operate together.
I feel like there needs to be a study of the DNA, the brain.
Well, and we talk about it all, the childhood, what did what, but it's definitely fascinating. There's no doubt about that. All right, buddy, are you ready to get into this episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved?
I am ready.
We're talking about the murder of Christine Cole. Christine Cole left home to go to the store on January 6, 1988, and never returned. Her body was later found on a beach in Warwick, Rhode Island. A man was arrested and charged with the murder 31 years later, but the charge was dropped due to lack of evidence. So Christine's murder remains unsolved.
So I'm going back a few years on the murder.
Yeah, 1988. And then, as we often see, it may take a long time, but, something gains traction in terms of a suspect. But, the authorities are not always successful at getting a charge to stick. Christine Ann Cole was born on January 4th, 1978. She lived in Pawtucket, Rhode Island with her mother, Margaret, her mother's boyfriend, Oscar Waldron, and her siblings. The Boston Globe reported that Christine had 2 stepsisters. Another article by the Globe reported that Margaret had 3 sons. With her boyfriend, they were named Oscar, Clint, and Shane. Christine's father was not in her life. She hadn't seen him for several years before she disappeared, according to the police. Sources don't reveal much about Christine's home life. Margaret was 27 years old when Christine disappeared, meaning that she was around 17 when Christine was born. Sources did not report that Christine was abused, but it did seem like she was unhappy at home. We just don't know what the reasons for that were.
Yeah.
In an interview with the press, Margaret said she had been supporting her family with $600 a month in welfare since her partner became disabled due to gout and had to stop working.
That's not a lot of money to support a family that size.
No, not at all. Have you ever had gout?
No, I had a friend that had it, and it would keep him from working. I mean, he'd be laid up for a while.
It's pretty nasty. I had it at one point. I take a pill every day just to make sure it doesn't come back.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Does that only happen like in the feet, ankles?
Yeah, I had it in my feet. I don't know where else it can happen. But.
Yeah.
She also said that Christine was well liked by her peers and seemed happy in school. Neighborhood business owners reported seeing Christine walking around town by herself, even at night. Margaret said she was protective of her daughter, but she thought it was safe for her to run errands on her own. She acknowledged that Christine had run away before, but noted that it was only for a few hours at a time. Margaret said in an interview she always came home.
Yeah, I don't know about the age that it's okay for a young child, 10 years old, to be out and about, wandering at nighttime, daytime too, by themselves. I know a lot of kids do that. I just don't know what that, in today's world, what that safe age is. Back then.
Well, I don't know if there is a quote unquote safe age because something can happen to pretty much anybody at any age. Now, I think you and I can go based off our experience, and we've talked about it on previous podcasts. Would we let our children do this at age X? And sometimes we say yes, and sometimes we say no. A lot of these things, parents have to decide on their own. And then there are some things that I think if you polled the majority of people, they would say, no, I wouldn't let my 10-year-old daughter do this by herself.
Yeah. They might say, yeah, I'm okay with her during the day doing this and that.
But not at night.
At night, I would say, nope, get on home.
Yeah, it's going to vary. The last known incident of Christine running away occurred in 1985. She ran away from home and was found in a nearby dumpster. Marie Mayer, owner of a general store on Main Street, said she warned Christine's mother to keep her home at night. Mayer told the Boston Globe, Christine would always come in, no matter how cold, no matter if it was pouring rain out. At night, sometimes we'd ask someone in the store to take a minute and walk her home. Mayer noted that Christine once came into the store with her mother and denied knowing her when she came in the following day.
A little strange.
Yeah, it's strange, but I think it's also painting a picture that, it seems she did this quite often. And it also maybe is pointing back to this thought that she wasn't real happy at home and maybe, was needing to get out of the house to escape something.
And obviously been doing this for a while because in 1985, when she was 7, they found her hiding in the dumpster.
Mayer said she once called the authorities after she saw Christine picking through the trash behind the store. Christine Cole turned 10 years old on January 4th, 1988. Wednesday, January 6th, was a normal day for Christine. In the late afternoon, her mother sent her out to get milk and clams. At this time of year in Rhode Island, the temperatures drop below freezing, and the sun sets pretty early, meaning Christine was walking in the dark by herself.
You don't even like walking in the dark by yourself.
I don't like walking all that much, day or night, but yeah, I don't like to walk in the dark by myself. So milk and clams. I'm thinking maybe there was some clam chowder going to be made. I don't know. We're in Rhode Island. Pretty easy to get clams, I guess.
Yeah, I'm not a fan, so I'm thinking
You don't like seafood. I love clam chowder.
Why would you even go to the store for that?
Well, you wouldn't. Margaret reported Christine missing at 8:44 p.m. She had been gone for over 4 hours at this point. So let's dissect that a little bit. We just got done talking about, what would we do? What would most people do? Would they let their 10-year-old daughter, walk to the store at night? Some people would, some people wouldn't. But how far away is this store? And are you going to wait 4 hours for the panic to set in? And I don't think most people would.
Yeah, I think most people would have a set time in their head. Like, here's the money, go down. I know it's a half an hour away. You should be able to get down there, get back, and get the shopping done in no more than 80 minutes.
Or whatever that time is. Yeah. It's not 4 hours.
No. I would think you start panicking by 2 hours.
If not before.
Yeah.
Margaret told the police that she sent Christine out around 4 p.m. with $10 worth of food stamps. Christine lived about 10 blocks from the market. Investigators traced Christine's final movements. Store clerks confirmed that Christine went to a seafood market and purchased clams, then went to another store where she bought milk and gumballs. The clerk at the seafood store described Christine as visibly upset and cold and afraid, per the Boston Globe.
Well, it was cold out that day, so I'm sure she was just cold from that. And then, I don't know, maybe she was afraid because it was dark out. Maybe just didn't want to be in the market at that time of night. Who knows?
Yeah, I think the main thing is we don't know why she was visibly upset. But according to Lieutenant Norman Moreau from the Pawtucket Police, he said she gave the impression that she was afraid to go home for some reason. Now, I want to go back to this market 10 blocks away. That seems like a pretty long way to go in the dark for a 10-year-old. I'm just going to throw that out there.
Yeah, I mean, you got to go all the way there and then work your way back.
At 5 p.m., Christine left the seafood store and went to a friend's house a block away from her home. She stayed until 6:30 p.m. and then went to the market. She told her friend's mother, though, that she was going home. But when she left, she walked the opposite direction from her home. The owner of the market reported that Christine entered the store at 7 p.m. and purchased 10 gumballs and a quart of milk. She left at 7:15. This was the last known sighting of Christine. However, there was an unconfirmed sighting later that night. So we are starting to get some information about some of this time.
Yeah.
And how much of it has to do with whether or not she's afraid to go home. And if so, why is she afraid to go home? She goes to the market. Then she goes to a friend's house, hangs out there, tells the mom she's going home, but she doesn't. She goes to the store. It does lend some credence to the idea that for whatever reason, she just didn't want to go back home. She was in no hurry to get back home. The manager of Star Market on Barton Street reported that 2 girls came into the store and were escorted out at 10 p.m. because they were acting up. The manager tentatively ID'd one girl as Christine Cole after viewing a photo of her. Lieutenant Norman Moreau said the police were not treating Christine's disappearance as an abduction because she had run away from home 3 times before. He was later quoted by the Boston Globe as saying she was known to be out alone a lot, a loner.
Is that a good thing for somebody that is 10 years old to have that reputation?
To be out a lot on their own?
Yeah.
No, I don't think it is. But again, I'm going back to this thought that she did not want to be at home. She was afraid of something.
I mean, there's a boy in my neighborhood, 9 years old, I think. I mean, he's out all the time. I see him with a cell phone, so I think that's good. But I just wonder, does his parents wonder where he's at? I mean, because I see him everywhere, but with an adult.
Maybe they have an app where they're tracking him.
Maybe.
I don't know.
Yeah.
The bigger question is, do they know that you live in the neighborhood and for some reason are watching this kid?
I would say the answer is probably no.
Detectives searched the entire state for Christine. They were worried about her because of the cold weather. The Boston Globe reported that Christine's mother and 3 others took lie detector tests, but the results were not reported. Papers from the time also noted that Christine was the 3rd child to disappear in Rhode Island in recent months. And we're going to talk about those disappearances, but before we do, I want to go back to it being January in Rhode Island. We don't know exactly how Christine was dressed, but no matter how it was, you're going to be cold.
I would think so. I mean, it's Rhode Island, wintertime. I mean, I'm just getting chills thinking about it right now.
So 6-year-old Jason Wolf and 10-year-old Frankie Barnes were murdered in December 1987. A man named William Sarmento was arrested on December 29th and charged with 2 murders, so he couldn't be considered a potential suspect. He wasn't out at the time that Christine went missing. One piece of evidence was discovered on January 7th, a mitten given to Christine by the owner of Saints Market, where she was last seen, was found in the snow in front of the store's garage.
Well, maybe on her way home walking, it fell out of her pocket, or it could have been something else.
Market owner Nellie Sareva gave Christine one mitten that had been forgotten by a customer. She said she gave it to Christine because she seemed cold, and that was all she had to give her. So now we find out that she wasn't wearing anything on her hands, to the point where this market owner noticed it and thought, this little girl needs something.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, all they had was one mitten, but that was better than nothing.
Yeah, my heart feels for her, Cold, no mittens, doesn't want to go home for some reason.
Speaking to the Boston Globe, Sareva described Christine as a sad girl. She said she never looked happy, never smiled, and she never saw her with other children. Sareva said, she stands there. I say, what do you want, honey? She says, I don't know. I see the upset in her face.
Oh, that's heartbreaking.
Well, it's painting such a bleak picture, right? Everyone who encountered this girl that night, she's cold. Well, she's cold because she doesn't have the proper attire.
Yeah.
To be walking out in that type of weather. She's visibly upset, acts like she doesn't want to go home. We still have to figure that part out. On January 10th, the police announced that Christine was believed to be dead from exposure to the cold. Detective Lieutenant Norman Moreau announced per the Boston Globe, we believe she crawled into an abandoned car, shed, garage, or dumpster Wednesday night, fell asleep, and died before morning. We don't suspect foul play. And I'm just wondering how they came to that conclusion.
Yeah.
What were they basing it off of? The fact that some people had seen her that night, she didn't come home, but no one had found her yet.
And she was known to run away before.
And she had run away 3 times, right? It was reported.
But isn't the other question that needs to be asked is, why is she running away?
It is a big question.
Yeah, and why doesn't she want to go back home?
But also, it seems pretty soon to me to be eliminating foul play from the equation. It was reported that the temperature was below 0 with moderate wind. The police continued their search, but now they were looking for Christine's body. They checked houses, sheds, garages, dumpsters, abandoned cars, and any other places they thought Christine would shelter from the cold. 2 search dogs attempted to track her, but found no new scent trails. So, you find out that it was below 0 with some winds, which would have made it feel even colder.
Right.
Now, is it even less likely that you're sending your 10-year-old daughter 10 blocks away to the store with nothing on her hand?
No way.
I just don't think that there's very many people that are going to say, yes, that is something I would do. Again, I don't want to put all the blame on the mother here.
No, I get it.
But it's something we have to talk about. Something doesn't seem right here to me. I understand that some parents are a little more trusting or they give their kids more leeway. I understand that. That's a parent's decision to make. But when it's 0 or below 0 with the wind chill, there's a certain level of clothing that needs to be worn.
And that makes it even more important when she doesn't show up after an hour, 2 hours. It should be clicking in your head like, we got a problem.
That's absolutely a great point. Does it change your opinion on waiting the 4 hours to report her missing? Knowing now that the temperature was 0 or maybe even below with the wind chill. Christine Cole was missing for 54 days. On February 28th, 1988, her body washed up on a beach in Warwick, Rhode Island, about 15 miles away from Pawtucket. A man was walking his dog on the beach at Connemara Point Park around 8 a.m. when he saw what he thought was a mannequin or some kind of doll. Christine's body was found at the point where the Providence River empties into Narragansett Bay. The tide was going down at this time. Her body was found in a cove near a boat ramp.
I know we talk about this all the time, the shock of finding a body, but the shock of finding a kid's body.
A 10-year-old.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's all going to be traumatic. It's going to be devastating for the person who finds it. But I do think there would be a different level of devastation finding the body of a 10-year-old versus finding an adult. I think there's something to that. It was said that Christine's clothing matched what she was wearing when she disappeared. Her mother identified the clothes that day, but the identification was considered unofficial. The North Adams transcript reported that Margaret spoke to reporters when she left the police station and said, "I don't know what happened or who did this, but I hope they do find the person who did this to my daughter." She continued, "I think somebody else was involved in her death because my daughter being in the water, someone had to get her that way. They must have picked her up, did whatever they did, and threw her into the water."
Well, I think that's a reasonable statement.
Yeah, very unlikely that she would make it to this point by herself and somehow end up in the water without another person's intervention, right?
Yeah.
Christine's cause of death was not determined immediately. The police said they would not decide whether to treat her death as a homicide until after the autopsy was complete. And that makes sense. I mean, you want to do that examination. You want to have all the facts before you come out and definitively say, this was the cause of death.
Well, it's going to be important to the investigation.
Deputy Chief Medical Examiner Kristen Sweeney said the autopsy, which took place the day Christine was found, indicated no obvious trauma. On February 29th, Sweeney announced that Christine died from drowning. As reported by the Boston Globe, Dr. Sweeney announced that the cause of death is asphyxia with submersion or a lack of oxygen due to being underneath the water. But she declined to say whether the drowning was accidental, stating, "Because of the circumstances and so on, all we can say is she was submerged terminally."
Kind of leaving it open there. Not saying it was accidental, not saying it was homicide.
Because I don't know how they could tell. Sweeney explained that the body had been in the water too long to determine whether Christine drowned or whether asphyxiation occurred before she entered the water. She recommended that the police treat the case as a suspicious death because of the circumstances surrounding Christine's disappearance and not because of the autopsy results. And I had a little bit of trouble reconciling some of those statements. At one point she says, she was submerged terminally. There was lack of oxygen due to being underneath the water. And then later she says, Sweeney does, not sure whether asphyxiation occurred before she entered the water. It seems to me like some of those statements are at odds with each other.
Conflicting.
Because my first thought was the autopsy kind of ruled out Christine being killed somewhere else and then her body being dumped in the water. But now I'm not so sure. Sweeney would not say whether Christine was sexually assaulted, but noted that her clothes were not in disarray. There were no other injuries, but further testing was still needed. Sweeney also pointed out that the identification was still presumptive based on Christine's clothing, and it was still unofficial. But on March 5th, 1988, the body found on the beach was officially identified as Christine Cole. Dr. Sweeney announced that the age of the bones and teeth were consistent with the child being 10 years old. Officials unsuccessfully tried to identify Christine with fingerprints and heel prints. She had no dental records because she had never been to a dentist, but she was identified by her broken tooth.
10 years old, never been to the dentist. Well, if they don't have dental insurance or ways to pay for the services, I guess that can happen.
But it's not good.
No.
Not saying it doesn't happen, but as a 10-year-old, you would like to have known that she had seen a dentist on a regular basis. But I get it. If you can't afford it, you can't afford it.
We know they were on welfare.
Yeah. With such little evidence, Christine's case went cold for the next 3 decades. In November 2018, the Pawtucket police released a deck of playing cards featuring an unsolved case on each card in hopes of getting new leads. These cards are only sold to inmates through the commissary at the Rhode Island Department of Corrections.
These are good things. I remember some similar cards being sold at other prisons.
Yeah, and actually a former inmate sent us in a deck, which we have here in the studio. I think they were from, I want to say Arizona, maybe something like that. I do think it's a good thing. You know, you're sitting around, you're playing cards, you have nothing else to do. You're going to read about some of these unsolved cases. And maybe, just maybe, somebody who happens to be playing in the card game knows something about it.
Yeah. Shared a cell with somebody that knew something. You never know.
The program was launched by Detective Susan Cormier. She received federal funding for the cards and invited departments across the state to submit cases. She spoke with NBC 10 about the purpose of selling the cards to inmates, saying sometimes they may have had a conversation with another inmate years ago or someone out on the street before they were incarcerated. They may know something and may be willing to meet with us or phone in a tip. It's a long time, and around the holidays, it's emotional. On July 18th, 2019, the Pawtucket Police Department announced the arrest of 59-year-old Joao Montero, a Cape Verdean immigrant living in Central Falls, Rhode Island. He was charged with the murder of Christine Cole. Detective Susan Cormier reopened the case in August 2018 and discovered evidence that was submitted for testing years earlier, but was not included in the case file. The test results came back in 2010 and showed that a male's blood was found on the inside of Christine's pants. Cormier requested further testing of the blood sample in hopes that advances in technology would give more information. Investigators obtained a larger genetic profile, which was checked against the Rhode Island Department of Health's DNA database. The closest DNA match was a 26-year-old man who had been arrested. He was not even born when Christine disappeared, so investigators began looking into his family and identified his father, Joao Montero. The arrest warrant stated that Montero lived at different addresses in Christine's neighborhood, including an apartment directly above the market where she was last seen.
This is good news for investigators, right?
Well, it sure seems like it. If you break it down, this man, at one time at least, lived in the apartment above the market where she was last seen. And then, you think about blood on the inside of her pants.
Yeah.
How does that get there? If it was on the outside, okay, you could make a case that, he was bleeding, it dripped on something, she brushed up against it. And I'm sure police could even tell if that was the case or not. But when you're talking about on the inside, it's going to be a little harder to get there.
Yeah, I think so. It's definitely leading them to think that he could have had something to do with what happened to Christine.
Cormier obtained a search warrant to collect DNA samples from Montero. On the evening of July 17th, she received news that the DNA matched the blood found on Christine's pants. Montero was arrested that night. But Montero denied knowing Christine or having any involvement in her disappearance and death. During the post-arrest press conference, Cormier said Christine was most likely in the wrong place at the wrong time because there did not appear to be any connection between her and Montero. And those are the hardest cases to solve.
Yeah.
When there is no connection between the perpetrator and the victim.
Just random.
Like you said, Gibbs, this was a huge development. After all, 31 years had gone by. Many were hopeful that Christine's case was finally solved. Then, on January 31st, 2020, the Rhode Island Attorney General's office announced that the evidence against Joao Montero was not sufficient, and they would not proceed with the case.
Talk about letting the air out.
Yeah, it lets the air out, but let's break it down. Blood found on her pants. It doesn't look good. Is that alone going to be enough to prove that this man had something to do with Christine's death? And I think that's, what the Attorney General's office has to weigh. Because let's remember, you put this guy on trial for murder, you only get one shot.
Yeah, I think you've got to have more than just that.
Well, they thought so for sure. The Attorney General's office wrote, the main evidence in the case is YSTR DNA, which matches Montero, but also matches all of his paternal male relatives. This did not narrow down the suspects enough to move forward with prosecution. Montero's attorney, William Devine, argued that the DNA could include thousands of people.
Well, that's not good for a prosecutor.
No, and I think it even shows you further why they were hesitant to move forward. Even if it wasn't thousands, even if it was, just a male in the family, a defense attorney could make a pretty strong argument. How can you pin this on my client when you can't prove that the DNA is even his? It could be a brother, an uncle. I'm not sure who all it could have been, but you're talking about a number of different people.
Enough to present reasonable doubt.
Yeah, absolutely. Colleen Fitzpatrick, the founder of Identifiers International, a company that solves cold cases, explained what this meant to NBC 10. She said, if you have a Y DNA match, all you can say is it's somebody in that family along the male line. You really can't pin down the exact person normally. And so, like you said, you could see where that would present a problem for a jury. You're going to convict a man based on what? The fact that it could be his DNA, but it could not be?
Yeah, it almost sounds like maybe the investigators or the prosecutors got a little too eager with this information when it came out.
A judge formally dismissed the murder charge against Montero on February 4th, 2020. Prosecutors didn't contest the dismissal and agreed that the DNA evidence just wasn't strong enough. Authorities could refile charges if new evidence becomes available. Montero's attorney, William Devine, told NBC 10 that his client was relieved. This chapter of his life was closed. He said Montero was emotionally distraught, adding, there was no other evidence, anecdotal or otherwise, to corroborate what those charges were.
He's not wrong.
No, he's not wrong. I mean, if they would have had an eyewitness that said they saw Montero following Christine or with Christine, okay, maybe that would have been enough along with the DNA to move forward. But if you don't have anything else, you don't have enough. Sources reported that Montero was a married father of 4. He worked the same job for more than a decade, but he was fired and could no longer pay his bills. He had to leave his apartment and move in with his sister. He became fearful and reclusive as a result of the charges. And we've talked about this before. If you're a person who really had nothing to do with what you were charged with.
Right.
And let's not forget, these are really heinous charges.
Oh, yeah.
Your life is never going to be the same, even after they dismiss the charges.
Yeah. Because people hear the first part, they never hear what happened. If you got off or if you were charged incorrectly, a lot of people won't hear about that.
Or even if they do, they don't believe it. They think, okay, they didn't have enough to move forward on, but obviously you were guilty because they arrested you.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think a lot of people are like that. Pawtucket Police Detective Sergeant Christopher LaForte issued a statement in response to the dismissal saying, we respect the Attorney General's decision. We are confident about our investigation so far, and we will continue work towards a conviction in this case. In January 2021, attorneys for Montero filed a civil complaint against the city of Pawtucket and its police department. The complaint alleges that Montero was arrested without probable cause, deprived of his constitutional rights, falsely imprisoned, and slandered, and that evidence was fabricated and suppressed in an attempt to solve the case.
Those are some pretty serious allegations.
Yeah, they are. Now, could some of them be true and others be false? I would say yes. Could they all be false? I would say yes.
Yeah, possible.
Montero's attorneys allege that members of the police department fabricated false statements and took advantage of a language barrier to make it seem like Montero was guilty. The lawsuit also alleges that DNA evidence was misrepresented or falsified. The complaint stated, this DNA profile potentially pointed to any number of men who may have had some connection to the area for some unknown reason. The Pawtucket defendants decided to target plaintiff, an innocent man. The complaint also noted, but for his race, ethnicity, and or national origin, defendants would not have targeted him for unlawful arrest. According to WPRI, the complaint stated that Montero had absolutely nothing to do with the murder and had never known or interacted with the girl. The suit named 4 members of the police department, Detectives Susan Cormier and Trevor Lefebvre, Major Daniel Mullen, and Chief Tina Goncalves, as well as Tamara Wong, an employee of the Rhode Island Department of Health who supplied DNA evidence in the case. Chief Tina Goncalves told 12 News, cold cases always have a high degree of difficulty, given the time that elapses. In this particular case, the department met the burden of proof for probable cause with new testing for the DNA sample to administer an arrest. The Attorney General's office looked at the findings and stated that they would require more information. The Pawtucket Police Department is working closely with the Assistant Attorney General assigned to the case and remains committed to giving the family of 10-year-old Christine Cole closure. At this point, the individual continues to be a prime suspect in the case. On October 2nd, 2023, a judge allowed the lawsuit to move forward because Montero presented sufficient evidence for a jury trial.
And based on that last statement, that he's still a prime suspect, I'm wondering if he thought by winning this trial would not only get him some money, but also somehow clear his name.
Yeah, maybe. Could have been just the money, could have been both. In the ruling, Judge Mary McElroy referenced texts between forensic scientist Tamara Wong and Detective Susan Cormier. Wong was the one who tested the bloodstain on Christine's pants. She texted Cormier, "It's a match." The judge ruled that Wong didn't elaborate on the fact that it was a familial DNA match and not a unique match, which led to a miscommunication with Detective Cormier. And we know those are two very different things.
Yeah.
A unique match would be one of those one in however many billions or trillions.
It's like a slam dunk.
Slam dunk. Obviously, this is not that.
It's like it's in the ballpark.
Yeah, you're in the ballpark, but we don't know which seat you're in.
Yeah.
According to WPRI, Detective Cormier responded to Wong a couple hours later and asked her to translate this into her language and dumb it down. Cormier claimed that Wong did not explain that the results were not unique and were just consistent with Montero's DNA. The DNA profile would match 1 in every 1,909 men. Those are not good odds.
No, not good odds to try to send somebody away to prison for a long time.
No, not at all. I mean, this is not even, you're in the ballpark. You might be in the right state, but we don't know where you are in that state.
Yeah, I can see where the suspect in this case was upset.
After all this information came out. Yeah, I can see that. Now, does it mean he didn't do it?
No.
No, it doesn't. But what it does mean is, just like the Attorney General's office said, there's not sufficient evidence to take this thing to trial. The initial affidavit identified the sample as being a consistent match. The ruling stated that Cormier texted District Court Magistrate J. Patrick O'Neill about the results. Her text referred to the results as a match without any qualification. And I think that's important. When you say to someone that we have a DNA match, what would that mean to you?
We got him.
Slam dunk match.
Yeah.
Like unequivocal.
Go get him.
Right. If you don't add something on to qualify what that match means, then I do think that's a problem, because I think most people would take it that way. This is a match. Couldn't be anybody else but him.
Yeah. I think this is when people in the office are high-fiving each other. We got the son of a, bitch.
Gun, bitch,
Yeah.
whatever you want to say. Cormier texted O'Neill when confirming her appointment to bring the arrest warrant application to him. She wrote, "We executed the warrant, did the DNA test, and got a match." O'Neill responded, "That's pretty blanking awesome. Expletive omitted." All right, Judge. I see how you roll. Judge McElroy ruled that O'Neill's response could potentially lead a jury to infer that he believed the results were a unique match based on Cormier's wording. And I think that is absolutely true.
That's what we just talked about, right?
I think that's what the judge thought. McElroy also found that critical pieces of information were omitted from the arrest warrant. A jury could find that Cormier was motivated by ill will and not a desire to discern facts. The omitted evidence was that Montero lived above the market where Christine was last seen 13 years after she died. Montero admitted that he lived in the building, but not in the 80s. This was corroborated by a stolen car report from 2001.
That's another problem.
It is. I mean, is the fact that he lived in that building of interest? Yes, it absolutely is. But if you say that he lived there 13 years after Christine died, then what's the relevance?
Yeah, it means nothing.
The judge wrote that the omissions from the warrant affidavit could be found to have evidence the determination to overstate the incriminating evidence against Montero and forestall any doubts about his guilt. The affidavit also omitted that detectives Cormier and Lefebvre interviewed a federal prison inmate who claimed he spoke to inmate Pedro Ortiz, who lived near where Christine was last seen and allegedly described drowning her.
I think that's another problem, right? They should have supplied this information.
It should have been in there. You can't pick and choose. And this is something that, irks me. When we talk about what is the goal should be to get to the truth. And to get to the truth, you can't use only the things that are favorable to you and throw out anything that doesn't match your theory or your suspect. It doesn't work that way.
No.
Finally, the judge noted that the police department did not have a system in place to supervise investigations, and Detective Cormier had been reprimanded in the past for inadequate investigation. Okay, that's not a good thing. Also, not really something you want to come to light in a judge's ruling.
No.
If a judge in some type of decision was saying about Michael Gibson, well, he's also been reprimanded many, many times and cited for poor job performance. It's, it would be true, but it's not something you would want to come out.
You talk to my boss again? Man.
Judge McElroy wrote, clearly the lack of any substantive training in DNA could be found to have directly contributed to Cormier's alleged failure to understand the results. Joao Montero's lawsuit has not reached a resolution, and Christine's case remains unsolved. DNA technology advances every year. We know that, and familial DNA is being used more frequently to solve cold cases. There is hope that the DNA sample can be narrowed down enough to identify a suspect and make an arrest if that person is still alive. So as we wrap this one up, obviously it's terrible what happened to Christine. We don't have answers to a lot of questions. A lot of those questions we asked early on. What was going on at home? Or was there something going on at home that she was afraid of? It's something that a lot of people seem to bring up, or at least they thought was the case.
I mean, she seemed sad. A lot of people said she seemed sad. Always alone. Just not things that you would expect to see or would want to see with a 10-year-old.
And you'd really like an answer to that question. Now, does it have a bearing on the case? We don't know. Maybe it does, and maybe the answer to the question would help provide something in the way of context. Maybe it has nothing to do with her disappearance at all.
Yeah, maybe not.
And then, you have this guy Montero. I don't know what to think of him. He is either someone who was kind of railroaded into being charged. His name was smeared. His life was ruined, which it's kind of leaning towards based on everything that the judge said. The problem is you can't exclude him, but you can't exclude a lot of people.
That's right. What we know is there's blood on her pants that
could be his.
Or many other people.
Yeah, 1 in 1,909. That is not a reassuring number.
No.
And it's not the type of numbers we're used to hearing, right? We're used to hearing 1 in 32 billion or whatever, 32 million or billion, trillion, I don't know.
Those are numbers you feel good about.
But when it comes to DNA, 1 in 1,909 means nothing.
I mean,
walk
out on the street in Rhode Island and that town. Well, you could have did it. You could have did it.
All you have to do is figure out how many males are in the area and divide that by 1,909. That's going to give you your percentage or your number of possibilities.
Yeah, it's going to be pretty high.
It's going to be a higher number than you would feel comfortable with.
Yeah.
And then I think my other issue is, so they go down this road. And you always have to ask the question, did it keep them from going down other avenues? Now, it was many, many years later. If this had happened 3 months after her death and they stuck with this guy for a long time and excluded looking at other people, I would say it would have hurt the investigation more. I don't know how much it hurt the investigation 30 plus years down the road. I really feel for this guy if he had nothing to do with it.
Oh, absolutely. I feel terrible for him if he had nothing to do with it.
But that's it for our case on the murder of Christine Cole. We got some voicemails, Gibbs. You want to check those out?
Yeah, let's hear them.
Hey, Mike. Hey, Gibby. My name is Jenny. I have been listening to y'all's podcast since 2018, I do believe. Right now I'm listening to the Nanette Cretinol case. And my husband was actually the gas delivery guy to that house and was questioned by the police in this case multiple times, not as a suspect, but asking questions about the gas and all of that. So, yeah, I just thought that was pretty cool. He doesn't listen to y'all, but he told me that I had to wait for him to listen to this case because he wanted to listen to it with me. Okay, bye. Hey, fellas, it's Jenny again. With the Nanette Creighton case, my husband, like I said, was the gas delivery guy, but the day before the fire, he had filled their tank up and had told the husband that the tank was too close to the house and needed to be moved back, that they would have to schedule a time to do that. And the husband did not want to move the tank from the house. He wanted it as close to the house as possible. All right, that's all I got. Thanks.
So I had to put those two voicemails together, but pretty interesting information.
Yeah, especially that last part there where the husband wanted it up as close to the house as he could get it.
Yeah, I found it intriguing.
Hi, Mike and Gibby. I can't believe I'm calling. I have been listening to you guys for years, off and on. One of my friends turned me on to you guys, and it's just been such a joy, as dark as that may sound, to listen to you guys. I love your banter. I love the back and forth. I had to take some breaks after a couple episodes, but I keep coming back, and eventually I'm going to get through Cat and then get to the Unsolved. I'm almost through it. I really am, and I'll get to the Unsolved, I promise. I've never been one to listen to the Unsolved portions, but for you guys, I will, I promise. I look forward to all the episodes to come, and I love what you do. Love what you do. Thank you so much for all the effort you put into your episodes and the background. It's just so fascinating. That's all. My name is Jen, and keep your own time ticking.
Oh, my gosh, Jen, we were wondering, were you going to call?
I've been wondering this whole time.
And finally, you called. We've been waiting.
So it's going to be a while, but this will be a little Easter egg for when she does get to this point in the Unsolved.
Yeah.
She's going to hear her voicemail.
We appreciate you.
Yeah, we do. Very, very much. All right, buddy, that is it for another episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved. So for Mike
and Gibby,
stay safe and keep your own time ticking.
Pluto TV is TV the way it should be, free. With over 300 channels, thousands of movies and TV shows costing zeros of dollars. So if you want to watch shows like Ghost, The Walking Dead, CSI, Star Trek, or The Price is Right, well, The Price is Right. It's free. Hit movies like Braveheart, Sonic the Hedgehog, Anchorman, The Legend of Ron Burgundy, or Mean Girls won't cost you a thing, because everything is free. All you have to do is download the app, which, by the way, is also free. Pluto TV. Stream now, pay never.
How much is an hour of your time worth? Whether you're a realtor, lawyer, accountant, or even a content creator, Stamps.com gives you the ability to focus your time on what you do best, not on tedious mailing and shipping tasks. Print stamps, shipping labels, or certified mail forms in seconds. More than 4 million customers have relied on Stamps.com to make their lives easier. Go to Stamps.com/audio for a special offer. No contract, cancel anytime. That's Stamps.com/audio.